The first thing I saw when I pulled into the driveway wasn't the house. It was the absence. The Doyle shed, our family's old barn, built in 1926 by my great-grandfather, was gone. Erased. Not burned. Not collapsed. Leveled. All that remained was a jagged field of splinters, sawdust, and muddy tire tracks. A massive yellow excavator sat parked near the debris, its bucket arms still crusted with pieces of what used to be century-old timber. And the smell, diesel, torn earth, and wood that had weathered nearly 100 winters, hit me like a punch to the chest. I slammed the truck into park and stumbled out. Behind me, the passenger door creaked open slowly, and Oliver stepped down onto the gravel, one hand gripping the doorframe for balance. His oxygen tank hissed gently as he adjusted the nasal cannula. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice dry and thin from the hospital stay. "Is this where Grandpa used to build windmills?" That question, so small, so soft, shattered me more than the wreckage ever could. I couldn't answer. Not yet. 3 hours ago, I was pacing the sterile hallways of Denver Children's Hospital, watching Oliver fight through another pulmonary flare-up caused by his cystic fibrosis. The doctors said he was stable enough to come home for a few days. We were hopeful. We were planning to paint the shed's interior next weekend. Turn it into a workshop for his inventions. And now? It was gone. I stepped over twisted boards and broken memories, my boots crunching on shattered glass. There, stapled crookedly to a piece of plywood jammed into the mud, was a plastic sheet protector. Inside, a notice from the Silver Hollow Homeowners Association. Emergency demolition notice. Issued by order of HOA President Melinda Paxton. Structure deemed hazardous due to age, instability, and proximity to community recreation areas. Demolition executed on today's date at 2:15 p.m. 2:15 p.m. I checked my watch. It was 5:42 p.m. We'd left the hospital just before 2, meaning the demo crew must have moved in as soon as I was out of town. I clenched the paper so hard my knuckles went white. "Dad, they didn't even tell us?" I turned to see Oliver kneeling beside a piece of carved redwood. He ran his fingers along the initials burnt into the beam. RWD 1926. Robert Wayne Doyle. My great-grandfather. The man who built the original dam that created Stone Hollow Lake. The man who taught my dad to repair water lines, who taught me how to rebuild pressure valves, and who once told me, "A Doyle never takes from the land without giving something back." Oliver looked up, his green eyes wide but hollow. "We were gonna fix it up, remember? We were gonna hang the solar panels. I was gonna build my wind tunnel project in there." His voice cracked. I dropped to my knees beside him, wrapped my arms around his thin shoulders, and for a long moment neither of us said a word. I felt the old fury stir in my chest, the kind I'd tried to bury since my wife died 3 years ago. But this wasn't just about grief anymore. Someone had planned this. Waited for me to be gone. And made damn sure they got the barn down before I could stop it. And I knew exactly who. Melinda Paxton. HOA President. Real estate developer. The Queen of Silver Hollow. She wanted more lakefront property for her dam resort expansion. And now she was coming for us. But she made one fatal mistake. She thought she could bulldoze the past. She forgot the Doyles built the lake. And we still held the valve. The next morning, I was still pacing the kitchen floor, coffee long gone cold, when I heard the familiar creak of the screen door and the slow, steady knock that always followed it. Only one person in this town knocked like that. Walter Briggs. "Garrett," he said, stepping into the kitchen with a grim look. "I saw it. I drove by last night. Damn disgrace, what they did to your barn." Walter had been our neighbor for nearly 40 years. He used to work with my dad back in the day, helping maintain the county water infrastructure before it all got outsourced. He walked with a stiff gait now, one knee replaced and the other just stubborn enough to hang on. But his mind? Still sharp as a tack. He set a manila envelope down on the counter like it was evidence in a criminal case. "Figured you'd want to see this," Inside were 4 high-resolution photos, printed from a DSLR camera. Walter still used one, said phones were for texting and weather, not truth. In the first photo, Melinda Paxton, dressed in her usual golf club chic, white slacks, expensive windbreaker, sunglasses on her head like a tiara, stood on my property beside a man with a laser rangefinder and another holding blueprints. The second image showed them pointing, not at the barn, but toward the tree line that bordered the lake. Our lake. Photo 3? A digital map on the surveyor's tablet, zoomed in on our lot. And the final photo? A crude outline of what looked very much like a swimming pool, layered over where our barn used to stand. She was here Monday, Walter said quietly. I was down by the boat launch when I saw her come in with those 2 fellas. Stayed maybe half an hour. Lot of measuring. Lot of pointing. Didn't notice me. Didn't care to. I sat down slowly, staring at the images. My pulse thudded in my ears. She never intended to preserve anything, I muttered. The barn wasn't a hazard. It was in the way. Walter nodded. Yup. And your land? It's not just quaint, it's critical to the next phase of that resort of hers. She thinks I'll sell, I said. She thinks you'll break, Walter corrected. After Walter left, I went down to the basement. I hadn't set foot down there since my father passed 2 years ago. His workshop still smelled like him, pine oil, solder, and pipe tobacco. Dust clung to the air like memories. Behind the old water heater, where he used to keep his fly fishing gear, was a cabinet I remembered from childhood. Steel, dented, locked with an old hasp. I knelt down, felt along the bottom, and sure enough, there was the key, taped to the underside just like he told me when I was 11. Inside the cabinet, beneath layers of brittle newspaper and schematics, I found them. Rolled blueprints. Hand-drawn. Stamped. And at the bottom corner, Robert Wayne Doyle, Chief Civil Engineer, 1926. Stone Hollow Dam and Agricultural Irrigation System. I unfurled the main sheet across the workbench. My breath caught. It was the original water system design, pipes, control valves, trench depth, lakebed contours. And at the far end, inked in careful script, emergency pressure valve, located on Doyle parcel. I rifled through the rest of the documents. A letter from the Stone County Water Commission, dated 1927. Another from the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Terms like perpetual easement, water authority assignment, and landholder sovereignty clause jumped off the page like spotlights. It hit me like a freight train. We didn't just live by the lake. We controlled the lake. My great-grandfather had designed the entire system. My family had maintained it for generations. That valve they referenced? Still tucked behind the pump shed by the old tree line. I used to play on it as a kid, thinking it was some weird antique wheel. It wasn't antique. It was power. And Melinda didn't know. Or worse, she did know, and she was trying to bury the evidence. I rolled the blueprints back up with shaking hands. Upstairs, Oliver was sitting at the table with his sketchbook, drawing a turbine design he'd been working on for weeks. He looked up, eyes bright despite the pallor in his cheeks. Did Grandpa leave anything cool? He asked. I hesitated, then smiled. Yeah, kiddo. He left us the whole damn lake. That night, after Oliver went to bed, coughing a little but still smiling, I returned to the basement with a flashlight and a rising sense of purpose buzzing behind my ribs like a live wire. If those blueprints were real, and they certainly looked real, then somewhere in this mess, there had to be more. My dad wasn't the kind of man to leave things half-documented. He kept everything. And he'd once told me, offhand, when I was a teenager too annoyed to care. The real power's in that rusty box by the lathe. Someday, you'll need it more than my tools. At the time, I thought he meant spare screws or maybe a stash of old coins. I found the box wedged behind the drill press, hidden beneath a heavy canvas tarp. It was iron, the kind of thing you'd see in a World War II museum, built to last, with a thick hasp lock that had long since rusted into submission. It took me 20 minutes and a flathead screwdriver to crack it open. Inside were three things: a thick stack of yellowed legal documents, tied with a red ribbon, a small leather notebook with R.W. Doyle embossed on the front, and a cloth-wrapped metal plate, stamped with an old seal. Stone County Water Authority, authorized access. I untied the ribbon on the paperwork first. The first document was a contract, dated October 3, 1926, between Robert Wayne Doyle and Stone County. It detailed the design and construction of the Stone Hollow Dam and irrigation system. The language was formal, ornate, but precise. The Doyle family was granted perpetual easement and regulatory authority over the entire water system stemming from the lake. The second document, dated a year later, was signed by a state water commissioner and affirmed that the primary control valve and flood mitigation mechanism would remain under the physical and legal control of the Doyle property, with inheritance rights extending down the family line in perpetuity. I sat down hard on my dad's old stool. This wasn't theoretical authority. This was binding. Legal. Powerful. Melinda Paxton didn't just knock over an old shed, she'd violated a system built before her HOA even existed. And it wasn't just her mistake. It was going to be her downfall. I turned to the leather notebook. My great-grandfather had written in elegant, looping cursive notes about valve inspections, rainfall tables, maintenance logs from 1927, 1928, even into the 30s. And then, one final entry in smudge pencil, dated the day before he passed in 1959. I don't trust where things are headed. If they forget who built this, they'll try to take it. But they won't know the whole story. Keep the valve key safe. Teach the next Doyle to protect the water. I reached down and unwrapped the cloth bundle. The valve key, solid brass, heavy as a crowbar, gleamed even in the dim light. Footsteps creaked above me. Dad? Oliver's voice floated down the basement stairs, sleepy but curious. What are you doing? Just learning a little history, I called back, walking up the steps with the box in hand. He met me halfway, his face pale but bright with interest. Did Grandpa really leave us something important? I knelt beside him and held up the brass valve key. Oliver, I said quietly, we're not just landowners. We're the reason this lake exists. His eyes widened. Does that mean we're the ones in charge of the lake? I nodded slowly. It means we've been in charge all along. And now it's time to remind them. The letter came on a Thursday. Thick envelope. Blue Cross and Horizon logo. Not good. I opened it at the kitchen counter while Oliver was outside feeding the chickens, wearing his little scarf and portable O2 tank like a tiny astronaut on a farm mission. We regret to inform you that Oliver Doyle's transplant case has been placed under extended administrative review due to concerns regarding financial viability and community stability. I didn't need to read further. My stomach dropped like a stone into the pit of my spine. We were scheduled to hear back this week, about final approval for Oliver's double lung transplant. The surgery he needed within the next 60 days, according to his doctor. The surgery that, if delayed, could cost him his life. And now it was on hold because someone, somewhere, had raised a red flag. I stared at the words, community stability. What the hell did that even mean? I drove straight to Walter's place, the documents in hand. He opened the door with his usual scowl and a steaming mug of black coffee. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. Worse, I replied, pushing past him and slamming the letter onto his kitchen table. They're stalling the transplant. Using phrases like community stability and public controversy. This isn't a coincidence. Walter's face hardened. You think it's Melinda? I don't think, I growled. I know. He motioned to his laptop, already open. Then let's start pulling strings. By noon, we had names. Linda Perryman, Director of Special Cases at Blue Cross and Horizon. Former college roommate of, wait for it, Melinda Paxton. Alumni photos. LinkedIn connections. Golf fundraisers together. And 3 weeks ago, Blue Cross received a private donation of $45,000 from the Silver Pines Community Development Initiative, earmarked for internal infrastructure and neighborhood risk review. Sounded like charity. Looked like bribery. Things got worse. That weekend, pamphlets began appearing on people's doorsteps. Printed on glossy paper, featuring a highly edited photo of me from the town hall meeting last spring, mouth open mid-sentence, eyes squinted, like I was yelling at someone. The headline? Water saboteur or concerned citizen? Below were bullet points that painted me as unstable, erratic, and dangerous. Engaged in unauthorized water manipulation. Refused HOA safety inspections. Emotionally compromised due to family illness. Threat to neighborhood cohesion. There were quotes, fake ones, from anonymous neighbors, claiming they feared for their pets and property. And at the bottom, in red bold type, "Is your family safe with Garrett Doyle controlling your water supply?" I stood in the driveway, gripping one of the flyers as my blood boiled. "What the hell is this?" I muttered. Oliver walked up slowly, holding one of his own. "It was in the mailbox," he said. "I found it before school." He tried to smile, but I saw the twitch at the corner of his mouth. He knew. "Did your friends see it?" He hesitated. "Zach's mom said I shouldn't come over this weekend. And Zoe." His voice trailed off. "She didn't talk to me in class today." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Melinda wasn't just trying to discredit me. She was isolating my son. Poisoning his world. Weaponizing his illness. "I'm sorry, Ollie," I said quietly. "This isn't your fault. It's mine. I should have seen it coming." He looked up at me with those sharp green eyes. "We still have the valve, right?" I blinked. "Yeah, we do." "Then maybe we should remind her who controls the water." That kid. 13 years old and tougher than most grown men I know. That night, I stood in front of the old shed's foundation, what little remained of it. In one hand, I held the brass valve key. In the other, the latest flyer labeling me a threat to my own community. Melinda wanted war? She'd get it. But not with fire or fists. With facts. With legacy. With water. She'd built her empire on the illusion of control. But she forgot one crucial thing. The Doyle still held the source. And this time, we weren't backing down. We recorded the video on a Sunday afternoon. Oliver insisted on helping with the setup. He positioned the tripod with military precision, adjusted the light to avoid the glare bouncing off the lake, and made sure the old Doyle shed's broken foundation was in full view behind me. He even held up a cue card that read, "Speak like you're talking to people who don't know anything, but want to care." Smart kid. I took a deep breath and looked straight into the camera. "My name is Garrett Doyle. This is my family's land. And what you're looking at behind me used to be our barn, built in 1926 by my great-grandfather, Robert Wayne Doyle. He designed the water system that feeds Stone Hollow Lake. He built the dam. And he left us, his family, legal control over its operation." I held up a copy of the original contract with the Stone County Water Commission, then the state authorization letter, followed by the valve control deed that had my family's name engraved into the margin. Last week, the Silver Hollow Homeowners Association, led by President Melinda Paxton, destroyed that barn without warning. They claimed it was unsafe. In truth, they were clearing the way for an expansion of her luxury resort, Silver Pines Retreat. Then I dropped the hammer. In the days following, my son, who has a life-threatening condition, was denied insurance approval for a lung transplant. The reason given? Community instability. That language didn't come from doctors. It came from politics. I pulled up a screen recording showing public donation records. $45,000 from Melinda's development company to Blue Cross and Horizon. And this woman, Linda Perryman, just happens to be the person handling my son's case. She's also Melinda's old college roommate. I paused. Let it sink in. They're not just trying to take our land. They're trying to crush our family. To silence us. To make us go away. Behind the camera, Oliver gave me a subtle thumbs up. So here's the part they didn't see coming. I reached down and held up the brass valve key. This key opens the emergency pressure valve for the entire lake system. My great-grandfather installed it. My father maintained it. And it legally, and physically, controls the water that feeds every pipe, faucet, irrigation line, and fountain downstream, including Silver Pines Retreat. I walked toward the camera and ended with a calm, quiet line. If Melinda Paxton thinks she can drown my son's future under luxury swimming pools and fake HOA authority, then she's about to learn what happens when you mess with the Doyle. We uploaded the video that night. By Monday morning, it had over 18,000 views. Walter shared it in every local Facebook group. One of the teachers at Oliver's school reposted it on Reddit. A neighbor stitched it on TikTok with a caption. This man just outlawyered a corrupt HOA with 100-year-old paperwork. The comment section exploded. Protect this man at all costs. Melinda's toast. This is public execution by truth. They messed with the wrong dad. People love an underdog. But they really love an underdog who knows how to fight back, with documents and history and iron valves. That afternoon, we walked the path behind our house toward the old pump shed, the one most people assumed belonged to the county. It didn't. The vines had overgrown it since last summer, but the metal door was still solid. I swung it open and stepped into the cool darkness, flashlight beam dancing across rusted tools and old gauges. There it was. The valve. Massive. Brass. Still as death. Oliver stared at it like it was Excalibur. You sure this is okay? He asked, a bit breathless, not from fear, but the elevation and excitement. I held up the deed again. It's more than okay. It's our legal right. He nodded solemnly. Then turn it, Dad. I fitted the key into the iron wheel. It groaned, like it hadn't been touched in decades. I twisted. Slowly. Purposefully. 3 full turns. A deep, hollow clunk echoed beneath our feet as the valve engaged. Water pressure shifted. Pipes moaned like waking giants. And somewhere downstream, the lifeblood of Silver Pines Retreat started to dry up. We walked back home in silence, the cool breeze coming off the lake cutting through the tension in my chest. Oliver leaned into me as we reached the back porch. That was kind of badass, he said. I smiled. Don't tell your nurse I let you say that. Deal. By sunset, word had already spread. The infinity pool at Silver Pines had dropped 3 feet. Sprinklers weren't turning on. Golf course fountains sputtered and died. And Melinda? She called. 6 times. I didn't answer. Let her sweat. Tomorrow, I'd see her at the emergency HOA meeting she'd called. And I'd bring the valve key. Just in case she needed a visual reminder of who controls the water now. If you think Garrett did the right thing, comment 1 below. The Stone County Board of Supervisors met every 3rd Tuesday in a modest room above the fire station. On most nights, it was half empty. But not this time. That evening, it was standing room only. Reporters from 3 local news stations stood shoulder to shoulder with neighbors, small business owners, even 2 teachers from Oliver's school. A group of teens held a hand-painted banner reading, "Let the water flow, let Oliver breathe." Oliver sat beside me in the front row, bundled up in his favorite flannel hoodie, oxygen tank humming softly. His eyes scanned the crowd like a young general surveying his troops. Melinda Paxton entered 10 minutes late, flanked by 2 attorneys and a woman who looked like a PR rep. Her smile was tight, controlled. But her eyes were flaring. She knew the tide had turned. Commissioner Halvorsen banged his gavel. We're here today to address public concern regarding the HOA-led demolition of the Doyle structure, the subsequent interference with medical insurance processes, and the legality of water rights tied to the Stone Hollow Lake system. Mr. Doyle, you may proceed. I rose, adjusted my collar, and stepped to the microphone. My name is Garrett Doyle. This is my son, Oliver. He's 13 years old. And in 60 days, without a lung transplant, he might not be here anymore. The room went still. I laid a thick folder on the table before the commissioners and began passing out copies. Inside, you'll find original contracts from 1926 through 1959. Signed and notarized by the Stone County Water Commission and the Colorado Department of Agriculture. These establish that my great-grandfather, Robert Wayne Doyle, designed and built the lake's water system, and that my family was granted permanent regulatory authority over its flow. I held up the brass valve key. That authority includes the valve that feeds water to Silver Pines Retreat and all surrounding developments. Melinda's lawyer rose. Commissioner, we object. I'm not done, I said flatly. He sat back down. I clicked play on a small speaker. Melinda's voice, clear and cold, spilled into the room. If his son's surgery gets delayed, he'll fold. They always do. Pressure points, ladies. It's not about water, it's about leverage. Gasps. Then silence. One commissioner visibly shook her head in disbelief. I obtained that legally, I added. Single-party consent law. And there's more where that came from. Melinda stood abruptly. This is absurd. He's manipulating this board with emotion and forged documents. His child's illness doesn't give him the right to sabotage a community. Sabotage? I stepped closer. You bribed a medical administrator to delay life-saving care in exchange for land access. You destroyed a century-old structure while I was in the ICU with my son. And you published lies about me being a threat, while I was quietly maintaining the very water system that keeps your damn fountains running. She snapped. You think anyone cares who built a pile of rotting wood in the 1920s? This town doesn't run on sentimentality. It runs on progress, and people like me. I smiled calmly. No, Melinda. It runs on water. And that water was never yours to sell. The commissioners voted unanimously to suspend the HOA board and launch a full investigation into Melinda Paxton's business dealings. As we left, Oliver squeezed my hand. Think they'll remember today? I looked back at the packed room, at the reporters scribbling notes, and at Melinda, slumped in her seat like a toppled statue. Oh yeah, I said. They'll remember. Should HOA presidents be allowed to control your insurance? Type yes or no in the comments. Oliver's surgery took place 2 weeks later. A donor match came through miraculously fast, and thanks to the viral public pressure surrounding Melinda's leaked recording, Blue Cross and Horizon approved everything overnight, along with a very public apology signed by their entire executive board. He spent 12 days in post-op ICU, 5 more in the recovery wing, and exactly 1 hour after being released, he asked if he could go outside and feel the lake air with new lungs. It was the first time I'd cried in front of him since he was 4. Meanwhile, Melinda's empire crumbled. A joint investigation by the state attorney general and the EPA revealed she'd been drawing excess water through illegal bypass valves for over 3 years. She faced charges for environmental violations, insurance tampering, and bribery. Her assets were seized, her resort foreclosed, and the Silver Hollow HOA was officially dissolved. She was last seen being escorted from a courtroom in Denver, still shouting about progress, as if the word might still save her. It didn't. A month later, the Stone County Board passed a resolution to reestablish water governance under public stewardship. They asked if I would accept the position of trustee of Stone Hollow Lake. I said yes. For my father. For Oliver. For every neighbor who stood up when it mattered most. And on a clear October morning, the entire community gathered at the edge of the lake for the grand opening of Oliver's Forge. Built on the exact site where our barn once stood, it wasn't just a building, it was a promise. A community center for kids, veterans, and anyone who needed space to build something real. Inside were solar-powered workstations, history exhibits, and a wall-sized mural of the original Doyle water system. Oliver helped cut the ribbon, beaming as he stepped forward, stronger now, his red curls beginning to grow back. This place isn't about what we lost, he said, voice steady. It's about what we build next. The water flowed again. So did justice. And standing by my son, hand in hand, I knew, for the first time in years, that we were finally home. Love stories where justice wins? Hit subscribe and don't miss the next one. At its heart, this story isn't just about water rights or HOA corruption, it's about legacy, resilience, and the quiet strength that lives in ordinary people. Garrett Doyle didn't set out to be a hero. He was just a father trying to protect his son, his family's land, and the truth. And yet, in standing up against injustice with nothing more than old paperwork, deep love, and unshakable resolve, he reminded all of us what truly matters. We live in a world where power often favors the loudest voice, the deepest pockets, or the slickest manipulation. But this story proves that integrity, history, and community can still win, especially when we refuse to be intimidated. Whether you're battling a broken system, protecting a loved one, or just trying to keep your head above water, let this be a reminder: you don't need to shout to be strong. You just need to stand your ground. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is turn the valve. And when you do it for the right reasons, justice flows, quietly, steadily, and forever forward.